Over the past decade, one woman has left police, families, and entire governments confused and stunned. A woman who crossed borders, adopted dozens of identities, and convinced trained professionals that she was a terrified teenager in danger. Her name is Samantha Azzopardi, and her story is unlike anything you've heard before. Samantha was born in 1988 in Australia. Even early in life, she struggled with identity, with belonging, and with a deep need to escape reality. By adulthood, she had created more than 40 false identities, slipping into each one with alarming detail. Psychologists would later diagnose her with a severe personality disorder and a condition known as pseudologia fantastica, the compulsive creation of elaborate lies that become just as real to the person telling them as to the people who believe them. Her trail of deception began visibly in 2010 when she was 22 years old. That year, she began showing up at Australian high schools claiming she was just 14. She submitted documents, spoke like a shy teenager, and convinced staff to place her in classes. At first, nobody questioned her. Her small size and quiet nature helped sell the illusion. But when inconsistencies appeared in her paperwork, one school realized the truth. She wasn't a child at all. Samantha was fined, but the encounter didn't slow her down. If anything, it pushed her deeper into her invented worlds. In 2011, she took things a step further. She befriended a family in Perth, presenting herself as a Russian orphan and former gymnast who had been abandoned and abused. The family, believing they were giving a lost girl a home, took her in and cared for her. They were on the verge of adopting her before the truth came out. Samantha left behind a family that felt hurt, confused, and betrayed, but she moved on to her next identity, as if shedding one life for another. Then came one of her most shocking episodes, Ireland, 2013. Samantha traveled alone to Dublin, and what happened next triggered one of the largest missing child investigations in the country's history. She positioned herself outside a post office, frightened and silent, communicating only with hand signals. She made authorities believe she was a 14-year-old victim of human trafficking who couldn't speak English and had escaped her captors. Experts, psychologists, police, and trafficking specialists worked around the clock to protect her. She was placed into high-security care, and Ireland spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to unravel her story. But nothing added up. Finally, Interpol identified her using global alerts. She wasn't a child. She wasn't a trafficking victim. She was a 24-year-old Australian woman with a long history of fabricated identities. Dublin authorities were stunned. Samantha was deported back to Australia. But her journey didn't end there. Just a year later, in 2014, Samantha surfaced again, this time in Calgary, Canada. She walked into a healthcare center, scared and shaking, telling staff she was a 14-year-old who had been kidnapped, assaulted, and abandoned. The story was horrific, and of course, emergency services rushed to help her. But when the fingerprints came back, Canadian authorities realized they were dealing with the same woman from the Dublin trafficking case. Samantha was charged with public mischief, served 2 months in custody, and was deported yet again. 2 countries, 2 costly investigations, and the same young woman persona repeated almost identically. Back in Australia, Samantha's behavior escalated. Between 2016 and 2017, she took on the identity of a 13-year-old girl placed in witness protection. She told a Sydney couple that she had survived trafficking and abuse. They believed her. They welcomed her into their home. She even attended secondary school under the new identity, pretending to be illiterate and traumatized. Teachers, counselors, and child protection experts tried to support her. It wasn't until she visited a doctor for a routine exam that the truth finally emerged. Her body was that of a 28-year-old woman, not a 13-year-old child. The discovery led to her arrest. She pled guilty to several deception charges and was sentenced to a year in prison. You would think that after prison time in multiple countries, she might stop. But Samantha's behavior continued to evolve. In 2019, she created an online profile claiming she was an 18-year-old au pair looking for work. A French couple hired her to care for their children. For a short time, everything seemed normal, until the day Samantha drove the children 2 hours away to a mental health facility. When they arrived, she told staff she was a 14-year-old pregnant girl who had been sexually assaulted. Not only was the story untrue, she had taken the couple's children without permission, leaving the family terrified. Staff recognized her from previous news coverage and police were immediately called. She was arrested for theft and child stealing, and she was sentenced to 2 years in prison. After serving her sentence, Samantha resurfaced again in 2021, once more pretending to be a 14-year-old French girl. Authorities caught on quickly, but her compulsion to recreate childhood identities didn't stop. Then came 2023, one of her most elaborate deceptions yet. Now in her mid-30s, Samantha contacted two family violence charities, claiming she was a pregnant 17-year-old Belgian trafficking victim. She used an AI-generated childhood photo to support the lie and even convinced a young European traveler to pose as her older sister. Over the next few months, she received food, housing, medical care, counseling, and financial support. She cost the organizations more than $25,000, resources meant for real victims in dangerous situations. Eventually, staff members who had seen her face in previous reports realized who she was. Police arrested her once again, and she was sentenced to another 2 years in prison. Throughout all these cases, one thing becomes clear: Samantha wasn't driven by greed. She rarely sought money. She often left places with nothing. Instead, she sought identity, she sought belonging. She sought a version of herself that she could live inside, even if it meant pretending to be a frightened teenager over and over again. Psychologists say her lies were a way to escape her own life, creating new worlds, new families, and new traumas that made people rush to protect her. But her actions came at devastating costs. Countries spent hundreds of thousands of dollars investigating crimes that never happened. Families were manipulated emotionally. Social workers, police officers, and medical professionals gave time, care, and resources to someone who wasn't who she claimed to be. Meanwhile, real victims, people who genuinely needed help, sometimes had to wait longer because resources were tied up in Samantha's fabrications. Samantha Azzopardi's story raises difficult questions. How do you protect vulnerable people without being exploited? How do you support victims while also recognizing the signs of deception? And how does a person lose themselves so deeply in their lies that they build entire new lives again and again? For more than a decade, Samantha became whoever she needed to be: a child, a victim, an orphan, a survivor, a student, an au pair. But behind every identity was a woman struggling with trauma, instability, and a fractured sense of self. This is the story of Samantha Azzopardi, the woman who lived inside her lies. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video.